Hi guys, so there's something that I briefly want to talk about. I've been having quite a lot of questions on my social media pages to talk about a certain area of my life. As some of you may know, I recently got married, and since then I've been having loads and loads of questions and comments from people. And this is something that a lot of people ask me to talk about, but I have been quiet about it because the truth is I did not have the answer. I didn't even know this worked for me until a few days ago when I listened to a message and someone shared the same experience, and I realized, oh wow, like that's how it really did work for me. And the question was, how did I abstain from sex before marriage? I have just two things to talk about. Well, I know that in a lot of Christian relationships, we live by assumptions, and that's to say that when we get into the relationship, we do not talk about a lot of things. We do not draw the lines, and we assume that we both know. So for instance, you're in a relationship, and because you're both Christians, you both assume that you're not going to have sex before marriage. But number one thing you want to do is to make the decision. We have no idea how much power there is in the decisions we make. I quite remember when I was in a relationship with my husband, when we were dating, we did make the decision. We came to a mutual understanding and conclusion that we did not want to have sex in our relationship. But I want to say that if you are in a relationship and you both cannot come to that mutual conclusion, maybe it will be best for you to exit from the relationship, because two people cannot walk together except they be agreed. So you need to come to that common conclusion. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is grace. Now, I know a lot of people will be thinking this is super spiritual, like you're wondering how can you avoid sex in your relationship through grace. Like a lot of people think or assume that the way out is by setting in measures like don't be in his room after 9 p.m, don't touch, don't kiss, don't hug. I mean, all of those steps do work, but if the grace of God does not find you, you can easily fall victim. Because I know of people who have like put in rules and said, oh, we're not going to be in the same room after 9 p.m, we're not going to hug, we're not going to kiss, but when the moment got really heated, they ended up having sex in the car. The first scripture is from 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verse 10. Now this is Paul writing a letter to the church in Corinth. Paul says that, but by the grace of God I am what I am, and his grace to me was not without effect. No, I worked harder than all of them, yet not I, by the grace of God that was with me. This is how I define grace. I say that grace is an enabler that helps you do difficult things very easily. And the second scripture I want to read is from 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 6 to verse 9. This is still Paul speaking. Paul was given a thorn in his flesh, and I'm sure this thorn must have been like really embarrassing, like so embarrassing he couldn't have even mentioned it as an apostle. He was asking the Lord to take away that thorn in his flesh, but God did not take away the thorn in his flesh. 3 times Paul asked God to take it away, but what God gave him was more of his grace. He said that my grace is sufficient for you and my power is made perfect in weakness. Being sexually attracted to your partner is not a bad thing. It's probably a very good thing. How are you going to get married to someone if you're not sexually attracted to them? How are you going to make babies when you get married if you're not sexually attracted to them? I was very sexually attracted to my husband before we got married. But like Paul is saying here, 3 good times he asked the Lord to take away that weakness from him. And you're probably praying to God thinking it's a spiritual attack, or you're probably binding the spirit, asking God to take away this weakness or this lust or whatever for you. I think your prayers are misdirected. What you really need to be asking God for is more of His grace, because that was the response Jesus gave to Paul. I was also tempted, I was also tried in many ways. I was conscious of the grace of God that was upon my life, and I walked in that grace, and that was how I was able to escape from sex before marriage. So yeah, so thanks a lot for watching. If you have any more questions that you want to ask, I will be glad to answer them in due time. You can send them to any of my social media pages. I'll put the link to my social media pages below so that you can send your questions in there, and I'll be very glad to respond to them. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Bye.